My name is Colleen. I use she, they pronouns. I'm a member of your steering committee of NPC or of SMC. I'm a former NPC member, sorry. And we are here today to talk about socialists in office and co-governance. And one of the things that I love about our caucus is that we are a caucus of serious and committed organizers who do the work every day of building power. And we're in this incredible new moment where we have seen some a new season of building power in our organization. Most notably with the election of Zoran Mamdani as a DSA member to the mayoralty of New York City. Even, as we saw this week, President Trump can't deny the shine of like socialist power. But we're also seeing wins and chapters all across the country, SMC organizers doing this work of building power by getting socialists elected into office and then winning real reforms and transforming society and our nation with that power. And if you've been in DSA a year, if you've been in DSA 10 years, you've probably heard that this question of what do we do once we've won power, or should we even try to win power through this way, can be an interesting hot topic in the organization. And you might be seeing people across the organization saying things like the era of AOC, the era of Bernie is over. And one of the reasons why we wanted to organize this call is because it doesn't just, one, we're committed to building power through elected office. And two, we're also clear and not afraid to dig into the contradictions that inevitably come with actually building power and navigating through those contradictions to effectively wield power and win change for the working class and win a more liberated society. So we're not going to ignore the contradictions. We're going to learn how to navigate through them together. And that's what this call is all about. So I'm really excited to be gathering here with you all to learn together, to hear about all of the incredible work that's happening across the country. We have some of our socialists in office and socialist candidates that are on the call today, much to learn from. So what the kind of agenda for today is going to be is we're going to kick things off with a question, a roundtable to hear from SMC members across the country, three different case studies in NYC, in Colorado, in two different chapters working together on a similar project, and also from Ithaca on how they have built power, gotten people into office, and what they've done with that power that they've built. And then we'll also go into breakout groups. So there'll be three different topics that you can choose from, and you're welcome to choose based on the context that you're in, the questions that you're dealing with, the stage that you're at in your chapter. And we're going to have SMC members there to help think through questions, to share insights, and to like collectively, again, help us figure out the next step for the work that we're all collectively working on. And we'll also close out then at the end of the 90 minutes with a couple of different calls to action and different ways that you can get plugged in both to supporting electoral work that's happening across the organization and also some of the caucus things that we have coming up. So just a couple bits of housekeeping. As you probably noticed, we are recording this part of the call. We're going to record the roundtable and snip it into videos and things to share publicly. So if you have any issues or concerns about that, feel free to like take yourself off camera, things like that. The breakout groups will not be recorded, so you don't have to worry about that. But we will have note takers because we want to make sure that we're capturing, like if you say, I could really use support with this thing. We want to make sure that we capture that so that we can try to follow up or connect you to other people and do some of that connective tissue work. We also, let's see, well, this is a members only call, but we do hope to have some public facing events in the future that everyone who's interested can attend. And then, everyone experiences spaces like Zoom a little bit differently. We do want this to be a really interactive call. The purpose is for us to gather together and share insights and resources and questions. But just kind of keep in mind, for some people, they really like to engage in the chat. We do want to make sure that we're focusing on the folks who took time to prepare for this call and share their insights, for example, but we also want you to feel free to like ask questions, share insights and things in the chat. So just knowing there's different styles and being mindful of that. Yeah, so we will go ahead and dive in. So our panelists today, we have from Ithaca, one of our socialists in office, Jorge, and Katie Sims. From New York City DSA, we have Jeremy Cohen and Sia, who I think is still in transit, but will be joining shortly. And then from Colorado, from Fort Collins, we have Greg Zoda. And from Denver, we have Skylar and Bryn. So we're really excited and glad to have you all here. We will start this first question with Ithaca. So just give for everybody here a brief introduction to the work that your chapter has done to recruit or support socialist candidates in office, build an SIO, and what you've accomplished through the SIO. So how did you build your SIO program? Where is it at now? Who are the electeds that you work with? And what offices do they hold? And then how does that impact your approach to SIO work? And you'll have 3 minutes.
Sure thing. So I'll take that one. Hello, everyone. My name's Jorge, he, him. I'm with Ithaca DSA. I'm a former chair for the Ithaca Common Council with Hannah Schvetz. We both won our elections this November, a couple of weeks ago, and we've been doing this since 2021. Our program started really during a summary of things happening at the same time, the cancel rent movement happening, coinciding with the Black Lives Matter protests that were happening led to a conflation of different things where groups like the Ithaca Tenants Union, the Ithaca DSA, and the Working Families Party got together and looking to what New York City was doing at the time, a couple of years back with Julia Salazar, we put forward a platform and an idea to recruit candidates to run on a shared platform created by those groups and to do what essentially would be a co-governance strategy. And we've been going ever since. We've won an election pretty much every year since then. And now we're going to be going to 2025 with three endorsed socialists in office and a newly ratified socialist in office committee to actually have a co-governance strategy that's institutionalized. Really excited about it because we've seen that this is something that's popular. We've come over different periods of people being like, oh, this was a fluke. How did they got lucky with the retirement and with convenient districts? But we've proven time and time again that we can win in different races, in different districts, and that people want the things that we are advocating for, which are, non-reformist reforms. It was the work of our Socialist in Office program that got good cause eviction passed in Ithaca that is putting us on the front lines to being the first city to abolish at-will employment and end unjust firings with just cause labor protections. And it's helped grow our small chapter of a couple hundred people into something that's punching well above its weight class. And I'm really excited to see what we do with really institutionalizing our co-governance by bringing in new electoral organizers, legislative organizers, after people like the people who brought it together, like Genevieve, Katie, and I. After we are gone, we want to make sure that this project is still one that's ongoing. And so I'm really excited to be talking about it with you all today.
Thank you so much, Jorge. Next, we'll go over to our Colorado comrades. So I'm not sure who wants to get us kicked off, but Bryn, Skylar, Greg.
Um, I can give it a go. Hi, y'all. My name's Greg, they, them pronouns. I'm currently the outgoing elections chair for the Fort Collins chapter. That is basically northern Colorado, if passed a little bit higher than than Boulder. And so our chapter's relationship with electoral work and co-governance has come from a couple things. So I also serve as one of two aides to legislative aides for our Socialist in Office State House Representative Yara Zokai in House District 52. We, as a chapter, were essentially the primary field operation for Yara last year in 2024, and have since both some of the kind of most involved folks that were on the team, right? She was already a DSA member. We became parts of her office. And we have also now set up a Socialist in Office committee that is elected by our chapter. It is a 5-person committee, and essentially, I can go into maybe more direct structure later, but the function of it is to be able to appraise, right, both membership and the elected of what each other are doing, find opportunities for collaboration, promote. For example, I think one of the successful instances of this, right, has been like, for example, promotion of like the recent practice picket in the unionized Starbucks in our area, right, and things like that. That said, this is definitely, I hearing right that Ithaca is setting up the SIO now is not surprising to me, right? Because this is a project that takes a while to get off the ground, so it's important that folks be thinking about what they are looking to get out of this formula kind of early on. Yeah, that's kind of a basic overview of how the structure has worked. I can kind of pass it to Bryn for filling in whatever gaps.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. I would say for filling in the gaps, Greg is from Fort Collins DSA. Myself and Skylar are from Denver DSA. We're both on the steering committee. In that the big gap is that we, during last legislative session, had to work through other electeds that were not members of Denver DSA because two of our state reps, they had lost their primaries. Two more quit the chapter. So when your SIO program kind of goes belly up, you're forced to lean, thankfully, gratefully, on other chapters' SIOs. In this case, what that meant is that we were working on a bill that some allies of our organization had put together, this nonprofit law firm that we've worked with a lot. On particularly like trans rights activism, put together this piece of legislation last session called the Kelly Loving Act, which was essentially just a bunch of changes to non-discrimination law. And so we were unable to interface with this directly because we didn't have our own SIOs. And so when we were tired of the bottlenecks, we kept running into having to work through the progressive bill sponsor. We were able to go through Greg and Yara in order to get information about what was going on and move on the bill in ways that other organizations weren't able to.
Thank you so much, Brennan, Greg. And I will pass it over to our NYC comrades. I think Sia is maybe getting us kicked off.
Hey everybody, I'm Sia. I use she, her pronouns. I've been a member of New York City DSA since I think 2017 or maybe 2016. And I was on the steering committee of New York City DSA when we elected our first socialist in office, Julia Salazar, to the state Senate. And then I worked with Julia Salazar in her first term to pass a suite of strong, pretty historic rent regulation reforms in New York State. And Julia really, as a new freshman state senator and Democratic Socialist, really led that fight. And the next year, we worked together to elect a lot more socialists and form our first Socialist in Office committee to our state legislature. And now, I think that there are 8 of them now in city council and the state and the New York State legislature, as well as 1 federal SIO. And we just elected a Democratic Socialist mayor to New York City. So that is my experience with, socialists in office. We've learned a lot. There have been a lot of mistakes, and I am excited to share them with you all. And I'll pass it to Jeremy.
Hi, comrades. Jeremy, he, him, NYC-DSA, one up everything Sia just said. I was co-chair I was on the steering committee in 2020 when we sort of, for the first time, had a collective of socialists in office and started thinking about, well, how do we build this collective? And also, like, what do we actually do with electing these people to office? It's more like we can win a race to like, okay, we won a race now, like what is the responsibility we have? How do we move from mobilizing and organizing thousands of members into getting involved in an electoral campaign to following through on their work in the work of collective governing in some way. And so was involved in forming the state SIO committee, then as co-chair, our city SIO committee, and then have been involved the last year and a half with starting a federal SIO committee for the first time, trying to build a deeper relationship between AOC and the chapter. So really excited to dig into all this work with you.
Awesome. Thank you all for being here to share your insights. And we tried to get diversity of different types of contexts and also different stages in the development of the SIO program and this work in general, because we're learning through the work of doing it. So the next question, and let's start with the Colorado folks, and then go NYC and then Ithaca. Talk a little bit more about the structure of the SIO system in your chapter or chapters. What are the strengths and the drawbacks that you've experienced?
Yeah, I'm actually, if I was going to see if I can pull up the actual resolution we used to create ours. I'll find that later while others are talking. But yeah, our structure is essentially we have 5 folks that are elected out of membership that sit in meetings with the elected at scheduled times. And can also have their own kind of independent work sessions if they want to. The idea is that it is, for the most part, closed off from anyone besides that unless they are invited, and membership are able to ask to be invited, but like that is not, that is an opt-in thing rather than opt-out, right? And that's to kind of, in a sense, right, when we had heard from folks who had tried to accomplish this in the past, we had heard that kind of making sure that it's a place where the elected can talk openly and strategically with the folks who have been elected to the SIO. It's important. We have 2 co-chairs of the SIO. They rotate in terms of report backs to steering. And all of the SIO members contribute to relatively regular reports at general meetings as well, which we hold monthly here in Fort Collins. Yeah, that's the majority of the basic structure for now, but yeah, so I'll pass it off.
Yeah, in the context of Denver, not much to say. We do not really have an SIOC. We do have a few SIOs, but I guess in terms of like how our relationships with them are structured, it's tied up in like personal relationships, I would say. There are people who like have contacts with some of these SIOs who have varying degrees of like closeness with our organization. It's a little bit chaotic, I would say. Strengths, weaknesses, strengths, not sure. Weaknesses, definitely like, approaching these SIOs in a structured way can be difficult. So yeah, I think like the advantage of having like a dedicated body in the org for that specific purpose is pretty clear to me.
Thank you all, Colorado comrades. I will pass it over to our NYC folks.
I think Jeremy's going to take this one first.
Yeah, happy to jump in. So I put in the chat just like the founding resolution if anyone wants to take a look at it. I'd say like the structure generally is one way I have of talking about it is like we do a lot of talking and we do a lot of talking like as a group. And I actually do think this is one thing I would emphasize that from talking to comrades in other chapters is a little unique. And I do think important about the NYC model is that we like we don't meet one-on-one with the legislators. We tend to meet collectively or have a lot of structures for meeting collectively, though of course one-on-ones happen as well. We have a group chat. We have a weekly call. We have semi-regular in-person meetings. Aspirationally, they were once a month, but really they're more like quarterly. And and sorry, I'm seeing a colleague down the street. And also like a yearly retreat, as well as just like regular socializing. Like we're all gonna get drinks in Albany, whoever is there, or the whole committee is gonna get drinks in NYC, that sort of thing. So we just do a lot of talking, and we do a lot of talking together. That talking is often like more about strategy, checking in, like aligning. And sometimes it's about like decision making, key, also, sorry, working on campaigns together. And then sometimes it's about like sort of decision making in key moments. As I said, we have three different bodies: a city, a state, and a federal SIO. I think there are virtues and disadvantages to having those three different bodies. Virtues is they can feel and become more useful to the elected because we can dig into sort of some of their daily work. Disadvantage, we can get really like absorbed into the brain of whatever legislature you're working on and not think so much about like, how are we building a party on the streets in the districts that these people represent and building a base for our politics that makes them more powerful in office to do socialist things. Um, Other, strengths and weaknesses, collective strategizing and action is amazing. And when it works, that's when we are at our most powerful. It doesn't always work. And conflict emerges between SIOs and DSA, between chunks of the committee with each other, between rank and file members and the committee. And working through that conflict is a really important, function of the body, but not always easy. Um, yeah, and finally, just like we're very beginning in our work on federal SIO, which is harder because it's dealing with Congress, and DSA possibly does not have a majority. Like there aren't a majority in the districts that DSA can move in any congressional district at the moment, though maybe our organization is hitting towards that. And so that means thinking about coalition in different ways. It means thinking, and also DSA does not really do much federal legislative activism. So that has its own set of challenges, besides also the uniqueness of AOC. But yeah, Sia, if you have anything to add, feel free.
I think the only thing that I would add is that as the committee has gotten much bigger, it's not at like it what Jeremy is describing means that we do really rely a lot on relationships with one another in order to get things done. And so it's both relational and structural, as all organizing is. And as the committee has gotten bigger, it's been hard to keep track of all of those relationships, honestly. And so I do think we're sort of approaching and maturing into a new phase where we need to think about like, okay, like the socialist in office state elected body needs to have a leader that is sent to go, like, there's like a lot of them. They need to identify a leader and they need to come talk to us as we've identified leaders from our organization. And so I think we're sort of maturing out of the structure that Jeremy described, which I think is still really important. But like all the talking is extraordinarily time intensive. The other thing is that it's very time intensive. And like for me, I'm like basically a professional lobbyist for my day job. In tenant organizing and advocacy work, but it is lobbying. And so there have been a lot of times where because I'm in Albany for my job, I'm able to also after hours play this extra role of like bringing the socialists in office together. It's pretty unsustainable, I think, in a volunteer only organization, the way that we've set it up. And the people who end up being really successful in the SIO are people who either have political jobs already or are people who, like on the DSA side, are people who have political jobs already, or are people who have like really flexible work and can sort of be in movement, like sort of like, I don't know, work for themselves or like have sort of flexible work. And so I think we are also struggling with how to make it a sustainable thing for our chapter while retaining the really important volunteer leadership that we have.
Thank you, NYC
Oh,
comrades.
sorry. Can I say one more thing? We work
Sure.
really hard to get DSA members. Like Karen's on the call. She is the chief of staff for Ferris Front Forest. A huge important part of our Socialist in Office project is that we get DSA members to staff the electeds once they get in. And I don't want to forget that because like using pressure to get, Karen, DSA leader, and comrade to become Ferris chief of staff is really important. And our offices work really well when we have done that well. And it's harder to get the elected and the staff brought into the project if the staff and the elected are not like in lockstep on this.
Thank you for that. I will pass it over to Ithaca.
Yeah, so my name's Katie. I'm an NPC member and the electoral chair of Ithaca DSA. And the important like setting the stage for Ithaca is that we started our electoral program as a coalitional one with the Tenants Union and the Working Families Party. And we like the local club. And so we all worked together and we established a co-governance system that was based on that model. And that was based on like a very kind of like of its time 2020 2021 like community engagement I ethic really, and like kind of um it so it was very relational and it was not very democratic. And but this body, what worked super well about it was that it was the people who worked on the campaigns and the electeds who won the campaigns. And the people who worked on the campaigns were kind of like informally representing each of these organizations, bringing stuff back and forth, getting the organizations bought in on the legislative campaigns that the electeds wanted to take, and getting the electeds bought in and ready to go and taking the actions that the organizations wanted to take. Um, but given the kind of like, given some differences in opinion and that kind of like come up in coalitional spaces, and like not always being on exactly the same page about like what a democratic structure really is, like we were not able to start out with electing or appointing representatives to it, or to kind of formalize the way that the information moved. But what we learned through this was that, similar to what the NYC folks said, is that like the relationships really are what moves the electeds and what moves the legislation. And so we put that first, and we put the time into developing the shared sense of our project and moving our work forward. Over time, we did realize that we really wanted to uh, kind of democratize it and formalize the structures. And also some of our coalition partners left the left the sphere. And so we had an opportunity to move towards a DSA specific SIO committee. And I want to I want to shout out Jorge here, our newly elected alderman, who drafted this and brought it to um, the chapter along with our chapter chair, Miranda. And so now we're just starting out formalizing it with appointed members by our steering committee. And um, one of the things that I also want to draw out here is the reason why we waited on this, we spent a couple of years in this kind of like, ooh, structure, was that we knew that we needed the appropriate buy-in and the appropriate political development to push it. We wanted to put our political goals ahead of our like structural ideals. And we knew that we did not have that up until this year. But the DSA chapter been a really big, has been so much more of a dominant part of the electoral wins this year, whereas before it was more of a shared effort, that we are able to kind of like stake that claim and to say like, this is going to be the DSA project. We're going to invite people in as collaborators, but like, this is our deal. And to, to build up to that, where that structure is possible. So we feel really, really excited about that. And I, for one, am waiting anxiously for our first SIO committee meeting this week or next.
So exciting. Thank you all. And I also just want to note, it's really, really hard to like summarize some of these complex questions in like a couple of minutes. So I appreciate the work that you all are doing to try to do that. We can dig into this a lot more in the breakout groups. Our next question, which will go NYC, Ithaca, Colorado, is what are some of the lessons learned or things that you wish you had known or would share with chapters doing this SIO work? And that could be positive stuff or negative, things we wish we had done differently or done better.
So the sort of enduring lesson that we have of the SIO project is that when there is something for everybody to work on together, the committee works really well. And when there's not a shared project that is like both the chapter thinks is a really big deal and the SIOs think is a really big deal, it tends to get really difficult to move the work forward. Every SIO has their own legislative priorities, and their own legislative priorities are really important. It can be hard to be like, it can be hard to sort of put together a comprehensive chapter-wide platform that's like, okay, like we care equally about every 8 members, like, bill. They're like special pet project that is it's probably a really important intervention. And so I think like figuring out something that like, yes, you're going to move your work forward. Yes, we're going to help you with moving your work forward, but our collective priority is ABC, is how you can get through hard conversations together. And for us, the times that our collective priorities have been like the easiest to navigate have been um shared elections. I mean, the shared election stuff is still really hard, but it's certainly something that like electing other socialists in office is something that they all worked on together very effectively. The New York State budget and like having a clear plan to sort of tax the rich in the New York State budget. And I think I do think that good cause eviction, which is Senator Salazar's first bill that she introduced in 2018 and became sort of like a touchstone for both the housing movement and the Socialists in Office electoral project, is something that it was pretty much the one bill that has like been everybody's my agenda and so yeah, I think that like emphasizing the importance of their own project and how to make space for the lawmakers to have their own legislative priorities and to be organizing in their neighborhoods. Last thing is they all are different and bring different strengths to the project, and we should not expect them to all be together. Um, Marcella and Farah are really, really good at things that Zoran is really, really terrible at. And I think that like understanding that people are different people and have different contributions to lead is important.
Thank you so much, Sia. Let's go to Ithaca.
Sure thing. So yeah, a lot of overlap there, I think, in some of our answers. But I think one of the things, as we just talked about recently, as you are getting ready to take on something like this, start developing the mechanisms for like co-governance and legislating like early on, even if it's just a couple of bullet points, something down, because the train is driving and constantly, and you're going to be putting down tracks to move along. There's never going to be that, all right, let's take a stop and pause. There's always going to be something going on. So as you are building these things, make sure to carve out time to have intentional conversations about how you want to handle decision making, how people are recruited and brought in. Because if you just sort of leave that on cruise control, the thing that will take precedence is sort of like the informal triaging and leaning on relationships to act as the means through which all this happens, which is a really good way to start it, but like it's not sustainable. And if we want systems need to be in place. So if you're trying to think about doing a program like this, start working on that now. Um, and then the other thing I would say is look around into what the other programs are doing. There are a lot of phenomenal chapters and SIO projects here right now. After Starbucks union busted here in Ithaca and shut down like their whole operation here in response to the workers unionizing, we were trying to figure out what made sense to do to support those workers and support workers in general. And that's what led me to figuring out what Tiffany Caban and others were working on in New York City regarding just cause labor protections, and it's become one of the flagship policies for Ithaca DSA and our SIO program here. And there have been so many other things that we've learned from DSA fund conferences with other SIOs, local progress convenings. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, and there's a lot of good things going on. And then the other thing I'd probably say, the last thing I would say is that you want to take big swings. Like I think the one thing that we can see from Zoran's lesson is that from his race and his victory is that it's never going to be our turn. There were so many narratives in the New York City electoral race that said, all right, these people are running because it's their next turn. They're the heir apparent to XYZ. There's going to be a lot of that in your cities and your and state governments. And taking these big steps for us, whether it was running 5 people, a person in almost every ward, or trying to fight these big non-reformist reforms, we were told that it's not the time, you don't have the capacity for it. Really think about what it's going to take to galvanize people and make this an exciting program that people want to join, because that's what's going to grow and sustain your project.
Thanks, Jorge. I'm feeling hyped. Let's pass it over to our Colorado comrades.
Yeah, so I think a few lessons that we've learned, we have kind of a unique experience, but I would say firstly that like leadership development needs to be integrated with your bill running and your legislating, and that if you have all of the relationships with electeds, not just electeds, but like attorneys you might be working with, like in the nonprofit realm or whomever your coalition relationships are that you're relying on to push through a bill, that you need to be thinking about like, okay, I may be the chapter co-chair, but I need to make sure that there's someone from like our trans rights working group or whatever body is organizing the people in the chapter, with me when I meet with our with Yara Zokai or with even like liberal legislators, in order so that when I'm no longer co-chair, there's someone who can take over for me. And additionally, so we have leaders throughout the chapter who feel ownership over the project and can advocate for it in the chapter and organize more people into it. I'd say another lesson would be getting buy-in ahead of time. Last session, we sort of our campaign grew alongside the bill. So it was like as we were moving into actually having it introduced at the end of February, beginning of March, like that's when we were really starting to do like to put it on the radar of our members when we had been working on it like since the drafting had started at the previous November. So as we're going into this next session, a really big sort of thing we're trying to do differently is like having more intensive stakeholding within the chapter's leadership bodies and within the like rank and file bodies, like for example, our trans rights working group, in order to get buy-in at both the member and leader level in the chapter in a more holistic way. And then looking to do that as well with other Colorado DSA chapters, in that last time we were kind of like, okay, guys, we're doing this thing. We hopped on this bill. Come do it with us. And we were able to get a few folks from Colorado Springs and Boulder to turn out. But now we're looking at that more proactively, thinking about like, how can we involve those leaders now in the development of this legislation? So yeah, I would say that our biggest lessons are integrating leadership development and trying to get the buy-in ahead of time and writing these plans way before we need them.
Thanks so much, Bryn. There's any other thoughts from Colorado? It's okay if not.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would echo a lot of that. A lot of what I've heard from comrades in other chapters, kind of, we are earlier on in our process, right? But I think it echoes a lot of what we've started to experience in terms of just like the structure of legislating is oftentimes very individualizing for legislators, and individual personality differences oftentimes, mean that you have to have both a very strong structure and a good relational connection in order to push things forward. And that the only way that you're not going to have like a kind of disconnect form between the office and your chapter is if you are proactively moving together on a shared priority. So.
Thank you all. This is the last question for our panelists. It's perhaps the spiciest one, but relevant to a lot of the debate that we see happening in our organization around this type of work. So attention in our organization has come around questions of accountability for electeds. How do you understand that emphasis on quote unquote accountability on things like red lines and moving to unendorse electeds? From how do you make sense of that, and what's your response to that as a tactic from that we see from some folks in our organization? And we'll start with Ithaca, then Colorado, and then NYC.
Yes, this is the fun question. I think that like the biggest kind of like overarching idea that I think that it comes into play here is that our elected officials will be as accountable to DSA as we set them up to be. And that means through that we need to be able to set them up with a democratic mandate from their election, that like they are there for a reason. The voters chose their vision. And if the folks in the districts around them or in their city council or whatever don't agree with that, or like think that their ideas are silly, like the voters are coming after them too. So we need to start there, and then we need to be planning an outside strategy that clearly demonstrates to the legislature that they're a part of that this is a desired outcome, that this campaign is a priority for people and that they really need to take it seriously. And then also, we need to be able to have those relationships with electeds, that when we tell them like, hey, this is a really big priority for the chapter, for this group of people, for XYZ, and you should carry it forward, like they need to be in constant and trustworthy enough communication with us. So in order to believe it themselves and trust the message that they should carry it forward. And that trust, I think, is really important. And so all of this is why, like, the way that I like to conceptualize the elected relationship is not like an accountability thing. It's not like a leash. It's a two-way street, right? And so the electeds bring to us a ton of governing power. What we can bring to them is the mandate to get their work done, is in small cities, like the research and writing that they need to get their work done. And that's something we benefit from a lot in Ithaca is like electeds can't do anything without support because they don't have any staff really. So they need help writing and researching and moving other people along, and we can offer that. And so um, the question of accountability is the question of what your chapter is able to offer the electeds. And it shows like a profound like weakness when when we're saying like our electeds aren't accountable to us. Well, it's like what we should be turning that around is why not? Like like what are we not bringing? What is the chapter? We should put it on the chapter and say like what do we have to bring to the situation, and how can we change it? And it does, there's I would ask anyone to bring an example of like a censure resolution or something really moving an elected's behavior on something. The evidence is very low, whereas the evidence of someone like building a personal relationship, demonstrating with public oh I'm out of time, but like demonstrating the support is very clear that electeds move around. So I like really challenge us to just when people bring that up to completely reframe the conversation, like don't take the bait on it really, and talk about what chapters can do in order to build the kind of power that they need to keep their electeds on the same page with them.
Yes, let Katie cook. Thank you for that. Let's hear from our Colorado comrades.
Yeah, I would really echo all that, obviously. A thing I would add is that there's like different like yeah levels of relationship that you can have with an elected depending on like the role that you served in like the coalition that brought them to power, right? Like if you're running a cadre candidate, right, that's different from like maybe someone who was in the DSA orbit who you are sort of glom onto but aren't the like major partner in their electoral coalition, right? So that sort of dictates the degree of leverage that you have, so to speak, over an elected. But also, like when you have these red lines and demand for accountability coming from within your chapter, it's also important, I think, to filter like which of these are genuine from people who like have principled issues with an elected, right, and maybe some line they're taking that they feel doesn't represent the principles of the organization, and people who are just trying to wreck, right? And I think like an important thing in threading that line is um, creating a culture in your chapter that like not everyone in DSA is necessarily inside the tent when it comes to a relationship with an elected, right? There are people who might consider themselves openly hostile to that elected who are trying to get in their way and just making sure that like we take into account feedback seriously from people who have demonstrated commitment to the project and to what those electeds are doing, rather than like trying to prevent them from doing anything at all because of the shameful moral compromise that comes with that work. I think that's an important thing.
Yeah, I'll also briefly just add, one of the things that in working with our SIO that she says a lot, right, is that the lobbyists that essentially surround the vast majority of our electeds in especially state office, right, they are paid to essentially make electeds believe that the sky is green, right? And that, a lot of when you have to think realistically about like, especially if you are some like in a chapter in a state where you're only going to have like one person in office, right? You're trying to build a counterweight to that social universe, right? You're trying to build an alternative kind of way that they can see the world around them such that they believe that they can actually bring about the things that you want them to, right? So I really agree with everything that both Skylar and Katie were saying on that front as well.
Thanks so much, comrades. And we'll pass it over to Jeremy to close us out.
Yeah, the hard questions for last. I think one thing I want to say is like we should recognize that this is not the first time socialists have had to deal with these questions. And one way I sort of like, that sort of brings the temperature down for me is thinking about like learning from the history of America and times where this has gone wrong and trying to build from it. I really recommend our comrade David Duhalde's recent essay for the Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung on the Socialist Party and comparing it to DSA today, the Socialist Party in the early 20th century. So too James Weinstein's book, The Decline of Socialism in America. And you really get the sense from that book, it's just like, and then the party had all these electeds, and then they started expelling them. Sometimes for really clear reasons, they had a different position. Sometimes for really unclear reasons, but like this happened at its height. So that's a thing to learn from in history to really try not to repeat. A second thing is, comrades in other parties across the world just have to deal with like the complexities of trying to cohere a party when some people are in office and some people are not. It's not a totally unique situation to us. That said, why is this like a focus of our membership at times? I think a feeling of powerlessness and an acceptable, I think Skylar's completely right that it's really important to be able to distinguish between pure wreckers who really don't believe in an electoral program and aren't making honest criticism. They're trying to say to DSA, don't do electoral politics through their criticism versus genuine comradely criticism. And I think from genuinely comradely criticism, there's a real feeling of powerlessness and frequent betrayals in American politics, which comes with the territory of having such a capitalist state so immune to democratic will generally. There's also, I think, weird stuff people in America have around elected officials, projection and intense individualization and personalization. It's really hard to break through to seeing electeds as like comrades in an organization and thinking about how do I deal with comrades in my organization when they have positions I really don't like, or they take votes in leadership meetings I really don't like, versus like, that's an elected official, and now I'm in elected official mode. I think there's also sometimes an underestimation of the objective constraints of doing a thing like we're trying to do in America, us not having a real party system of any kind, let alone a party of our own. Finally, I think, and this is a little sort of self-criticism on our part, for those of us sort of on the side of building these institutions, I think we are sometimes shy about or don't do enough to articulate our like positive vision of what we're trying to do here. Like, why does the squad matter in American politics? Even though the squad has had its flaws, why did it really matter that out the gate after shortly after October 7th, there was a group of 10 congresspeople who were ready to say like, no, ceasefire now. Like, we don't do enough to articulate, hey, forest for the trees, this is what the project is about. And without that, why wouldn't people be like, but wait a minute, why should I have any patience for this thing that's come up that is like totally unacceptable? So all that is part of my analysis. I think what to do about it, one thing that can come from having an analysis, I mean, obviously one can share that analysis with others, but then I think the sensible enough at times rejoinder is, well, so you don't believe in accountability at all, huh? And I do think like we want to refocus the sort of way we think about these problems to like from individual questions, like what about this elected and this XYZ thing, to why are we disorganized here? How do we build more power? But that doesn't mean no criticism or action when stuff comes up. I do think one aspect of this is if electeds feel like they're coming up against real constraints against their power, which is making them make the decision that they made, it's on us to sort of talk about those constraints, not to say to our membership, don't expect great things, but to say like, hey, here's how hard it is, here's the objective constraints, what do we as a movement do about them? Asking electeds to dial in our members and ourselves dialing in our members that way and thinking about the objective problems we face, I think is one of the most effective ways to building like a ladder of consequences sort of thing. So it's not like 0 to 1,000. It's not like denounce, expel, or do nothing, but it's like have internal conversations, have a membership meeting, have, yada, yada. There's like other possible things to do. And finally, just like articulating our own vision. Why are we electing people? What do we expect them to do? What do we think the problems are going to be? How do we think we get through those problems? To me, that's like politics abhors a vacuum. If we don't articulate a positive vision of like, here's the thrust of the political moment, and where there are problems, we're not going to let ourselves get totally derailed because we still have to stay on the track. We have to say, what is the track?
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Everyone, please give some appreciation, some rounds of applause, some sparkles for our entire panel of comrades from across the country who are digging into these questions with us, sharing the insights and lessons learned from the blood, sweat, and tears of years of work. We are serious about building power. We have a vision of a world that we want to win. We know that we need people in office to make that happen. And there's lots of contradictions with that. And we are not afraid to dig into the contradictions because we are unapologetic about wanting to win and wield power for the working class. There are some great questions that are starting to come up in the chat. And what we're going to actually do right now is go into breakout groups where we can have even more discussion on some of the specifics of different stages of this work. So Vincent is working hard behind the scenes to get these breakout groups created. We're going to have our panelists in each of these. And just a little bit of housekeeping before you jump into a group. These will not be recorded. This is an opportunity for you all to ask questions, think through the context of your chapter's work with SMC comrades across the org. And again, there are 3 different topics. So group 1 is how to start an electoral program, how to identify and run people for office. Group 2 is building an SIO committee and beginning to build that co-governance structure. And then group 3 will be focusing on running campaigns and passing reforms. Obviously, there's some like overlap and interplay between these 3, but we're going to have our panelists and other folks with lots of experience in each of these groups to talk. We're going to have, it looked like there was a lot of interest in the second topic, so we're going to have groups of about 20-ish. So if you are in a group and it's looking like you have more than 20, if there isn't a second breakout group, we'll create a second breakout group and move some folks into it just so that there's a little bit more kind of small group one-on-one time to connect. And we'll also have some note takers, like I mentioned, who are going to be kind of capturing themes from these conversations so we can think about like additional resources, additional calls, maybe some agitator articles that people could write about some of these questions that you all are helping to surface, or case studies that you all have. And we are at 5 till the hour. So we're going to spend a good 30 minutes in these groups. We'll try to give like a halftime, a 10 and a 5-minute warning. And then don't leave after the breakout groups close, because we will have a quick wrap up and a couple of exciting calls to action to participate in work in the caucus and support some of our socialists in office. Really great discussions in your breakout rooms. If folks would like, we'd love to hear in the chat just some of the big picture takeaways that you have from the call today, some things that you learned, maybe a new question that came up in discussion that you're going to be chewing on for the next couple of days or weeks. So don't be shy to share some of those takeaways that you're going to walk away from today with. And as we get those going, I do want to pass it over. We have a couple of good and welfare type calls to action. So again, we have a handful of folks who are running for office right now, who have been endorsed by their chapters and are continuing to build out our growing Socialists in Office group here in the US. So I'm going to pass it over first to Amanda, who is one of our steering committee members here in SMC and also the co-chair of North New Jersey, with a call to action.
Hi, my name is Amanda. I'm co-chair of Central New Jersey, but it's okay. As many of you may know, Joel Brooks, an SMC member, has advanced to a runoff in his race for Jersey City Council. So with his election coming up on December 2nd, under 2 weeks away, it's very, very important that we provide all the support we can as a caucus to him. whether that's by phone banking, canvassing, or donating. If he's elected, Joel Brooks will be one of the first DSA endorsed office holders in New Jersey and the first socialist in New Jersey elected to office in over 100 years. So I am putting links in the chat right now. I see Colleen just did too. So phone bank, donate, volunteer, whatever you can do. Let's get him elected and let's win on December 2nd.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amanda. Thank you for leading your Central New Jersey chapter. I'm going to pass it over next. Is Adam on the call today? I think I saw him. Adam, are you here?
Yes, I am. How you doing? Yeah,
Glad you're here.
I am glad I'm here as well. We got a baby napping in the other room, so I'm going to keep it down. But I'm just really, really happy to be with everybody today. Just to talk about SMC in general. It's I'm very happy that I found my political home within my political home, and so very glad to be with all of you comrades today. And Buffalo had, a really exciting thing happen a few years ago, back in 2021, and we, for a variety of reasons, it didn't follow through, right? We lost the general, but the lessons that were learned unfortunately didn't carry forward because for another variety of reasons, the chapter just kind of quit electoral work. And so in many ways, this campaign that we're doing right now is going to be, kind of rebuilding all the infrastructure that we should have and we could have built back then. So I'm just really excited that we had the chapter vote. We had a record turnout for the endorsement meeting with the chapter, and also record turnout for the actual electronic ballot. 96% passed the endorsement. So this area, people are really ready to get back out there and do this work, right? And it's just one of the many things that we have to be doing as socialists to take on the capitalist power. But it's an essential one, just like the rest of them. So Buffalo getting back into the mix is going to be really exciting because I've been speaking with some of the electeds from downstate and learning more about the SIO, how it works. That getting dialed into that statewide group is going to be such an exciting possibility for us, because to be able to go from the western tip of New York all the way down to the eastern southern tip and have socialists all across state is going to be really, really exciting. So all the questions and the things that we've been talking about on this call today, and I've been listening to all the other points that are being made, I'm really excited to put those into action once we win this, because I really do believe that we will win this. So the call to action would be Bojak for Assembly, all spelled out. Oh, and not like the horseman, it's just BOJAK. Bojakforassembly.com. We are going to be having a canvas kickoff early next month just to get our people on the doors, because they are frothing at the mouth to do something. But yeah, there will be more phone bank opportunities getting sent pretty soon. So yeah, thanks everybody. Good to be with you today.
Thank you, Adam. Donate to Adam's campaign so we can get more socialists in office in the New York State Legislature, working with Claire Valdez, where Zoran had come from. Let's build that out. We love to see it. Next, I'm going to pass it off to another one of our SMC steering committee members, William, to talk a little bit about some asks.
Hi, my name is William, and can I just say, even though Bojak is not the horse, he is the goat. Okay. Sorry, that was horrible, I know. I'm gonna laugh about that later though. So I see that thumbs down. Hey. Anyways, I'm also the Agitator editorial lead. So if you are interested in writing for the Agitator, I heard so many great ideas that I would love to hear fleshed out in a longer form content. Thank you so much.
Thank you, William. One other call for caucus participation broadly. If you liked this call, if you want to help shape calls like this in the future, join our political committee. Vincent is currently our chair of that committee, and he helps organize calls like this. The committee meets every other Sunday. I believe next Sunday is the next meeting. So you can log into Slack, and there's a political committee channel for that if you want to get involved. And finally, I'm very excited to announce another caucus initiative that is launching officially today. A group of us have been working together to organize a socialist feminist study group that we're going to kick off in January of 2026 and run through March. It's a 7-week study group where we're going to be reading pieces and listening to podcasts and watching videos about different topics of socialist feminism across the gender spectrum. We've got topics like decolonial feminism, race and racism, intersectionality, including some facilitation from our own caucus member, Barbara Smith, talk about a goat. And so we want you to join. If you would like to RSVP, please fill out the form that we just put in the chat. This is going to be a really incredible opportunity to ground ourselves in the socialist feminist tradition and teaching, which is a really central part of who we are as Socialist Majority Caucus. So hope to see you on that in a couple of weeks. Thank you all so much for joining us today on this call. Thank you again to everyone who contributed, whether it was logistics to get the call off the ground, people who shared their insights on the work that they've been doing, people who attended and shared their insights in the breakout groups. This practice really helps make clear just like the collective power and knowledge and skills that we are building together in this caucus for the good of our organization and the good of our country and world. And I think as Liz put it in the chat, her takeaway is like, we can figure this out together, you know, and that's one of the things that's so beautiful. I am always, sometimes it feels overwhelming about me as an individual. What can I do? There's so much to learn. There's so much to figure out. But like when we are harnessing the power of our collective, we have so much together and we have so much still yet to do and to navigate together. And so I'm so excited to see all of the work that's happening and what we're going to accomplish in 2026 and 2036 and 2066. So let's keep this party going. And thank you all so much for being here. We'll hope to catch you on the next call. Solidarity forever, y'all.